picking up in the shop.
Yeah.
I know the first two are fine, but that's all. After that, I'm gonna do like. Okay. Is dinner. We're all out the door. That's what you did. No, I went in the building, my 13. No, those don't get it. From Monday shift, I stand at 4:40. So we need a start from 45. We walk in and chase Marina, usually right around 4:30, and she has 10 minutes to put her skills down and get on there. But she's doing ice dance for the first time next weekend. So she goes, actually, not really the rule that you have to come up before you see the team because you don't want to talking. So she was wearing her clothes. I got her name to go around.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm Amy Winston. I'm the vice principal here at North. I'm the person that has sent you lots of email already. For those of you that are new, that's a big chunk of my job is communication. We'll talk about that a little later. So thank you. This is actually our first time doing this part of our 8th grade transition in person since pre-COVID. So we weren't really sure how many folks were going to show up. This is like super exciting. So we thought we might be talking to an empty auditorium. We are doing a live stream tonight. We do have families who are accessing the program in other languages. So that's why we have this up here for our families at home. And I'm going to hand it over to our special ed administrators who are going to kick us off tonight with our first part of our session.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be the best part of my whole day. Thank you. I'll take that applause. I also can't stand still, so I'm not going to stay back here. Good evening, everybody. My name is Emily Bozeman. I'm the Special Education Department Chair here at Newton North. In our department, we have 2 other leaders. This is Carrie Lynn Carnahan, and we have another assistant department head who should be right here, but she is outside getting her car towed at this moment. She's going to join us in just a minute. Her name is Lisa Goldthwaite. Take me back to the very beginning. One more. There we go. Hi! So today you are here to learn just a little bit about special education at Newton North. So I just want to be clear about what tonight's session is and what our goals are. So this is to give you a very high level sort of overview of special education services at Newton North. As you know, all special education team decisions are made in a team setting. So we are not here, unfortunately, to talk about your individual student's individual case. Those are conversations that you should be bringing back to your school-based team. As you enter transition season, some of you may have already had a transition meeting, but we're already in close contact with your teams, and we attend some of those meetings as needed, and we consult with those teams very regularly. So again, our purpose here tonight is to really give you sort of broad information about what you can expect from special education at Newton North. The more specific experience will be yet to come. Okay? All right, let's go. Oh, and here's Lisa. This is Lisa Goldthwaite, the other assistant department chair for special ed. Welcome, Lisa.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about supports that are available to all students at Newton North. So not just students with disabilities, not students on IEPs, but these can be accessed by any student at North, but because it helps paint a picture of the range of supports and services that we offer. So we're going to be talking about our specialized supports in some following slides, but just to orient you, we have our school counselor support. So every student is matched with a school counselor. So in previous iterations, people in these roles were known as guidance counselors. We're now calling them school counselors. So they'll be an important point of contact for your family and for your student, and they work in close collaboration with the special education team as well. So they are a very important part of your student's experience here at Newton North. We also have adjustment counselors. So these are clinicians that can provide short-term individualized counseling or group counseling for students at North. So again, this is not specific to students who have disabilities or students who have IEPs. This is available to any student at Newton North who needs it. We also have win blocks, what I need blocks. So these are 3 specific blocks during each week where students can meet with teachers. Students have the autonomy to choose what they're doing. As long as they're on the right track, a teacher might be able to override a student's choice if they say the student needs to meet with me to retake an exam or get some extra help. But every student in the school has these blocks available for extra support from any staff member in the school who can provide that support to them. We have advisory. So this is where your student will find a community of peers. They will get important information that pertains to them and their specific needs as a freshman and then as a sophomore and as a junior. So that group of students all kind of walks the same walk together. Important information is disseminated during those blocks. And your child will get to know some peers who aren't necessarily in their classes. So it's another opportunity to connect and to find out more about the school community. We have peer tutoring. So again, this is something, a system that we've set up where older students can receive credits and donate their time to be able to help students who are taking classes that those students were successful in. Before and after school program. So this takes place 3 times a week. Before school is twice a week. After school is once a week. And students can get homework help. Students are referred to this. But I believe they can access it without being referred. So this is if a student is struggling, they can access this support. And then we have freshman orientation activities, which you'll get a lot more information about later on this evening. And from your student's current 8th grade counselor, they'll also be able to give this information to you.
All right, I'm up. So there are just kind of some important reminders as we go through talking a little bit more specifically about what special education support looks in the high school setting. And this primarily wraps around the fact that our goal is really to provide the appropriate level of services that allow your child to make effective progress. So as we go through high school, that will change and adapt and grow as your child does, and we'll make those adjustments on an annual basis, just as they have in their schooling up until now. All services and programs must be proposed through a team meeting process. So what that will look like for you in the current year in 8th grade, and as we get closer to the end of this year, is if your child has already had an annual IEP meeting for the year, there was probably already some discussion there about what high school will look like. And if the team felt like the recommendations were fairly clear, they may have already made those recommendations. If there are questions about what those looked like, or they felt like they needed a little more time to make those projections, then your child is going to have a second meeting in the second half of the year. If your annual is in the second half of the year, then expect that these will be combined for sure. And we'll talk about this a little more later, if there's something particularly complex about the case or the team has questions, they're not really sure what the recommendations look like, they will invite us, one of the 3 administrators, to come to your child's meeting so that we can help guide that process a little more. But we do a lot of training with our middle school colleagues to help them understand what the recommendations look like, and they know your child best right now, so we really trust them to make good recommendations, but we're here to support that process as needed. All right, next up.
Okay, so some of the services that are delivered through special education are delivered in the general education setting. So these are inclusive services. In the general ed setting, these services are delivered through general and special education teachers and ESPs. Our ESPs are our educational support professionals. Those may be teaching assistants or behavior technicians. We also have case manager collaboration and consultation. So Newton North is in an academic support model. So when your student matriculates up to Newton North, they will be assigned to a case manager. That person plays multiple roles. Not only are they the ones that are facilitating team meetings for your student in collaboration with the whole team, of course, but they are also a partner to you, parents, communicating with you about what's going on, staying in communication with you, keeping that sort of bird's eye view on the case to make sure that your student is continuing to make progress and to call the necessary meeting if they are not. So again, these are supports that you can expect in the general education setting. When we talk about general educators and special educators together, we do offer some team talk classes for students with specific learning disabilities. And in those cases, those teachers are teaching alongside each other, okay? Again, as we've said a couple of times, all services are always proposed based on student needs, and they're recommended through a team process.
Okay, so in addition to services in a general education setting, we also offer academic support classes. So these are similar to the academic support classes that your student would get at the middle school level. They are taking the place of a class here at Newton North, so it would be A block or B block or G block, for example. Where your student would be matched with their special education liaison or their case manager to provide a smaller group setting for them to work on their IEP goals. We also have substantially separate content-related courses. So again, if through the team decision process, your child's IEP team is recommending that your student receive core content classes in a substantially separate setting, we do offer those. Those are taught by a special education teacher alone, so they are different than the co-taught classes where there's a team teaching model. And then we also have therapeutic support classrooms. So if your child requires more wraparound therapeutic support, we have that level of service. We have community living classes for students that need that type of support. And then there are a variety of other small group classes for reading or speech and language. So dependent on what the team, your child's team is proposing, there could be a wide variety of supports and services that are offered as part of that process.
Yes. All right. So Carrie Lynn alluded to this already, but for some of our students, they are getting some specialized services from various providers. These are just a sampling of ones that are available. And again, this always comes through the team meeting process. So if your child is currently receiving these services, your team will discuss them and decide what is needed going into the high school setting. So counseling, reading, speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, mobility services, vision, adaptive PE, music therapy, BCBA and other consultation. So again, these are very individualized. So depending on what your child has now, the team would consider what this will look like at the high school level. But if they've been getting it up until now, it's available here in some way, shape, or form, for sure.
Okay, so at Newton North, we organize ourselves into programs. In the special education department, we have 7 different programs, which is why we have 3 separate administrators. So I oversee the academic support program. The academic support program is our most moderate program, servicing students in an academic support model, and those students may or may not be receiving additional services. But again, these are our students who are attending academic support, as we said, which functions like any other class in your student schedule. They are attending their classes in whatever service delivery model is recommended through the IEP and accessing their services that way.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. I work with our therapeutic programs and also our language-based programs. So the Compass program is one of our therapeutic programs. This program offers social-emotional support for students primarily with primary social-emotional disabilities and require some extra therapeutic support to be able to access their classes throughout the day. So students in the Compass program are fully included in the general education setting except for the therapeutic services that generally comprise of academic support and individual and maybe group counseling. Our pilot program is also a therapeutic program, but this is for students that require more support, therapeutic support, and content-related classes. So pilot offers core academic content classes in a smaller therapeutic setting. So this is supportive for students who may not be able to access general education classes for their academic content. We also have a language-based learning support program. So this is for students who may have a dyslexia profile or other language-based learning disabilities who require reading instruction, substantially separate English class to be able to access the ELA content, but they are fully included for other parts of their day.
All right. And then I supervise the remaining 3 programs. So the STEP program is a support program for students on the autism spectrum who are accessing all of their academic content at grade level. So these students are primarily in general education courses. They're getting case management as well as often other services, primarily speech and language, but other services as needed as well. And then the Connections program serves students with a variety of needs, but primarily ones who have intellectual disabilities or who are cognitively complex in some way. These students take a mix of special education and general education courses as best fits their needs. It can be a mix of settings for those academic courses. And then they often have other services as well as that they may be accessing based on their individual needs. And then finally, the STRIDE program is an ABA-based methodology program, primarily serving students on the autism spectrum who need more individualized or small group support pretty much throughout their entire day. They do have access to inclusive classes as meet their vision and personal interests, but they are getting a lot of very highly structured support through their IEPs as well. Again, just as a reminder, all of these programs are discussed as part of the transition proposals that teams are making and have to come through the team process.
And then I just want to touch on the transition process once more. We've mentioned this a couple of times, but middle school case managers are prepared to discuss transition at annual IEP meetings throughout the 8th grade year. So you may have already had your annual review meeting and discussed the transition, and your IEP may be ready to go. You may not have had that meeting yet, and you may have had it and be setting up for another one specifically to talk with us about transition. Again, we're in close contact with the middle school teams to make those determinations. But as you are working with your teams, if you feel like your case or your student requires a high school representative, please make sure that you're communicating that to them. For students with early fall meetings, transition meeting may already have happened. And for students with more complex transition needs, we are always at those meetings so that the teams, some meetings were already lined up to be there. Okay, so if you have any questions about your transition process, by all means, chat with your current case manager and your current team. We're in close contact with those folks all the time. They're actually coming up to interface with our whole department next week to learn more about the transition process, more about what we offer so that those recommendations are really tailored to meet the needs of your students. Okay, and these are just this is how you can contact us if you have a need. That's the main number to the special education office here, and those are all 3 of our email addresses. You can feel free to reach out with any individual questions you have about your student and their needs and how we might meet them here. With our remaining time, we will take any questions that you have either from our live audience or from our audience online.
Hi, my name's Jamie from Day. My daughter is Jaya. So I have a question about your extracurricular activities. I've spoken to some parents who've been here before, and they say a lot of good things about that. What kind of supports does the high school offer? I know what the middle school does. Thank you.
Is it working? There we go. That's an excellent question. As with the daytime support that your child needs, it is like a team discussion to see what support is needed. In general, I would say, if your child would have difficulty like following the expectations of extracurricular activity, if they need support to kind of with their social pragmatics or other ways of being included fully in those activities, then we would discuss if a couple different things could happen. There could be some accommodations. but in general, it's often an adult support. One thing that's different about extracurriculars at the high school level than the middle school level is that while every club has an advisor, an adult advisor, they're not necessarily in the room 100% of the time. So that's part of the team discussion if your child needs that support. And that's very much ongoing. So like as interests evolve and students say, I'm interested in this club or this activity, then we would kind of discuss it and figure out what's needed. That said, there's also some things here that are expressly designed to really actively support students with a variety of needs. The primary of those being our unified sports program. So in the fall, we have unified basketball, and in the spring, unified track. So all students can participate in that. It's an intramural activity. It is competitive in that they have games, but it's really just people are kind of there having fun. It's not, there's no tryout. Anybody who's interested can really participate, and we partner peers together to help for support. There are adults there as well if needed, obviously the coaches and some additional staff from the special ed department, but in general, we really try to foster peer supports there. And then additionally, we have a really inclusive theater program here. So we have one show in particular for freshmen called Freshman Cabaret that is a no-cut show. So everybody who tries out gets in. The advisors happen to be two special educators, myself being one of them, and so we're often able to, again, develop peer supports there, but if needed, we'll enlist additional adult support. So those are some things that are kind of intentionally structured from the get-go to be inclusive, but we can always figure out ways to support students' inclusion in any extracurricular, and it just goes back to the team. So if you have a question for your team, your child's like, I really want to do anime club, let your child's case manager know, can have a conversation. If support is needed, we'll figure it out. Thank you for the question.
I have a couple questions from online that one I'm gonna answer and one I'll toss your way. So I have a question online. What about students on a 504 plan? So our 504 plans at the high school are managed by our school counselors. And so a little later this evening, our director of school counseling will be here, and she'll be speaking about all of the supports outside of special education for our students. But a question I will toss your way is, if someone is coming from out of state, how should the team process start? So we do have families that are not currently 8th grade NPS families here or online.
All right. So yeah, so also if people here know people who are thinking about moving to the Newton community, the way you start the process is go to the Newton Public Schools website and you register your student. You'll have to provide proof of residency, and then at that point you also would forward along any relevant documents, testing, IEPs, et cetera, that you have from their previous schools. And then when you have your registration meeting, the school counseling department would assign a counselor that would be there. They will also have reach out to us, and one of us will be present, and we'll talk about how your child's program would or could be implemented at Newton North High School. We would also very quickly have basically a team meeting to adapt that IEP from the sending community to the kind of what it would look like here at Newton North as well. But basically you go through the same registration process, but if you provide all the special ed information, then you get one of us at your registration meeting and we take it from there. So that also applies to students who might be returning from private schools. If there's a lot of K-8 private schools in our greater Newton community, and if you're transitioning back to Newton North, it's the same process. You just have to register them at North, and then we pick it up from there.
Hi, my name is Janice Morales, and my question is, if the student starts, let's say, in one of the services you have, let's say Compass, how do you determine if they're not doing well, if they need to be moved to, let's say, the pilot? Like, what's the criteria, what's the process, and does that even happen here?
Sure. So students' needs change, right? And we work closely with the middle school teams to make the best plan that we can to support students based on what we know about them and what we know about our programs. But sometimes needs change over time, or it's not the right fit. And so any of what you're talking about always goes through the team process. So anyone on the team, you included, and your student, now that they are 14 and able to participate fully in the IEP team, anyone on your child's team, you, the student, or any member of the providers who are providing support to your student can call a team meeting to talk about any concerns, talk about your child's progress, and talk about whether or not the IEP that's written as it is still makes sense or whether it needs to be adjusted. And so sometimes those adjustments happen within the same program. Sometimes the adjustments mean that the team might be considering a different program. So students frequently move between programs based on need, and that doesn't happen at the end of an academic year or the beginning of an academic year, just as IEPs are renewed annually based on the renewal date. So too can those team decisions be made at any point in the year. And we work closely with families and students to talk about how to mindfully implement any transitions that might be taking place if that affects classes or support staff or whatever it is. It's a very individualized process.
Online about our career and technical education programs. So we are very, very lucky here at North to have a very robust career and vocational and technical education program. And the question is, what does this program look like for students with IEPs?
So I'll take a stab at it, and then the two of you can weigh in. So any of the offerings at North are available to students, whether they have an IEP and require support or not. So again, this comes down to coordinating closely with your child's team and the teachers of that program and following the process. But we support students across any array of programming here at Newton North, including our CTE programs. Anything else?
Sure, I can mention that a little bit. If you stick around and see our presentations later tonight, you'll learn about this in a lot more detail. But freshmen start off with our exploratory program. So these are half-year courses that are available in each of the CTE majors. And so if your child takes that course and then that's something they're really interested in, they work with that teacher, and if they've met the benchmarks, they can move on into the next level, which is major 1, and then so on through the years. Like Carolyn mentioned, any of the supports your child has on their IEP are available in that setting potentially. It's just a team discussion, so accommodations apply there, for example. If the student might need aid support there, that's a team discussion, and that can be put on the IEP as well. So just depending on what courses they're interested in taking, that can be part of the transition discussion in terms of what they need to be successful there.
So I've heard that when your child is signing up for classes, some of the classes that they want, they tend not to get, or they fill up quickly some of the core ones. Is that something that does happen? And if so, how can they get into the class that they're needed, that is needed for them to, accumulate their core classes?
So there are a couple different pieces to that, but one of the most important is that we have as complete information as possible from the middle schools and from families in the spring. And that's why later I'm going to go over the timeline for course registration in the spring, and we work really closely with the middle schools. But for example, if an IEP goes out to you for you to sign, it's really important that you get it signed and back so that we know what services we need to build into a student's schedule. So that's an important piece of it. We have to have the most complete information from students and families in the middle schools. When we build schedules over the summer, one of my jobs in particular is to look at every ninth grader's schedule and to work really hard to make sure that we're putting together all of the pieces of the puzzle to fit as much as we can, if that means services and electives and trying to make a jigsaw work. But there is also a limit to the number of blocks in the day. And later I'm going to go through a bunch of examples of kind of how we try to Tetris those things together. But it's really key that we have the most complete information possible and that we have as many selections for electives and alternates as possible so that we have some options to try and build the best schedule we can for students.
I'll just add that we are legally obligated to get all of your child's services into the day. So we do everything we can to try to build that in first and then plug in their electives and things around that. So, but there are times where it does get a little tricky, but Amy and our scheduler, Megan, are great partners in that and really try to help us maximize opportunity for all students. I'm going to just repeat something Amy said that's really important. The sooner you can get that transition IEP back to us signed with the transition services on it, the easier it will be for us to do that work for your child. But if we don't get that IEP back until August 15th, at that point it's going to be much more challenging for us to maximize opportunities and to make sure your child's getting their services. So please, we work during the summer. One of us is pretty much always around. So, and obviously we're here during the school year. So if you get that IEP and you have questions, and reach out to your current case manager for your child, reach out to us. We'll do our best to answer them and get those questions settled before we go into the scheduling season at the very tail end of this year and going into the summer, so that we can maximize those opportunities. So we want to be your partner to make sure it's the best possible experience. Any other questions?
Some friends sending me questions in Spanish. It's testing my work here. Here's a good one. Maybe Dr. Turner will want to answer this one. I want to have my son earn his diploma. What does that look like with special education services?
Great. We want students to have access for students who are pursuing a diploma. The vast majority of our students. Hi, and by the way, hi, I'm Henry Turner, principal at New North. You'll get to see me in a few moments. But the vast majority of students receive a diploma. There are requirements for receiving a diploma that include passing certain courses. You may have just heard that Massachusetts just voted to get rid of the MCAS as a requirement for competency determination, which was a graduation requirement. And so we are, I think Ms. Winston was throwing this to me because we are in the throes of trying to figure out what that looks like now that MCAS is no longer a requirement. And so we'll have more information, but certainly by the time that your students are seniors. If you are, it is something you are concerned about or worried about, certainly working with your special education team to set that as part of the goal. And they are there to support you to make sure that you are taking the appropriate courses to make sure that you're there for you're ready for graduation.
Good job, Dr. Turner.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to close us here so we have some time to transition to the next part of our program that's going to start at 6:45. And if anybody here wants a restroom break or anything while we transition, the bathrooms are right out in the lobby. Okay, we're going to change.
Thank you so much for being here. A reminder, here's our contact information if you need us. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Good evening, everyone. We'll get started in 1 minute. All right, we'll get started. We have a jam-packed night for you all. Welcome to 8th grade night. Absolutely. My name is Henry Turner. I'm the principal here at Newton North. This is night 1 of our 2-night package for you so that you get your full experience of Newton North this winter. So tonight will be more informative. We'll be able to answer some questions. And then on February 13th is what I think is one of our top events at Newton North, which is 8th grade night for electives. And you will get to see the energy and excitement that is Newton North High School. So absolutely. So and I love the spirit already. Good. This class is going to be fantastic in terms of Tiger Pride. I love it. So I come with a little bit of new experience. This year, I am currently a 9th grade parent in a different community. And as I was wolfing down my dinner, I got a text message from my wife who told me that our daughter was not in a great mood. She had that in itself you could probably resonate with, but she had a biology test that she had to study for, and she wasn't really happy with how she played in soccer for her team over the weekend, and so she needed to condition tonight, and needed to go to the YMCA on the treadmill. And so my wife tried to explain to her that probably studying for the biology test was more important than one exercise. But she got upset. She doesn't understand. We don't understand her. Her dad's a high school principal, but we just don't understand her. We don't know anything. And so then we let her make the decision what she wanted to do. And so we would think that one option was to study, and the other option was to work out. Well, she decided she was going to walk on the treadmill while she was studying. And there are probably so many parenting questions that you may have there. But what we have realized at this point is that it is her job to make decisions for herself at this point. It's our job to support, it's our job to give advice, but it's her job to make decisions. And she may learn that decision was not a good one. Hopefully not by falling on the treadmill. But it is a part of her development for her to make these decisions, to figure out what works for her, what doesn't work for her. And that is my one bit of parenting advice for you as high school parents. With that, I am going to pass the microphone over to our PTSO president, and then I'll get back and tell you a little bit about Newton North.
So before you hear from the PTSO, I just wanted to say hello to all our families and students that are viewing at home. We do our best to provide live interpretation for our students and families, and so our students and families at home right now can go ahead and choose their language, and they will be having access, and I'll be monitoring their questions from home while we also monitor questions later in the evening here, okay?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the class of 2029. It's a little bit crazy because I have a member of the class of 2029 too. I also have a member of the class of 2026 at home. My name is Christine Dutt. I am one of the co-presidents of the PTSO here at Newton North. And I just want to highlight a couple of things that the PTSO will do in the fall that you'll want to be aware of. The first thing is the PTSO sponsors a welcome event for 9th graders. It happens during a Tiger block early on in the year, probably like the 3rd Tiger block of the year. And if you don't know what a Tiger block is now, don't worry, you're going to find out tonight. So we do that for students. And then for parents, we have a great event, which we call North Side Porch Side. It is a ton of fun. Dr. Turner comes. It is the only event his wife comes to. And it's a parent social. And it's a lot of fun. It's a little bit like a progressive dinner that you might have done at another, like in your elementary PTO. So how will you find out about these things? The PTSO has a weekly email newsletter called Tiger News. And if you are already enrolled in Membership Toolkit at your middle school, you'll get that information automatically. You'll be enrolled in Tiger News, or you can go to the Newton North PTSO website and opt in now if you can't wait that long. And we will also be submitted something to your middle school PTSO email newsletters in the spring so that you won't miss any important information. And I will see you back here in the fall with more information about the PTSO at 9th grade night in the fall. So welcome. This is a great event. You really will learn a ton about how scheduling happens. And the elective night, Dr. Turner's not exaggerating. It's awesome to see the opportunities that your students will have here at North. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. And so I can't express enough that one of the things that is unique and is special about Newton North is our sense of community. And as Christine was speaking, is that it is true that my wife only goes to one event, and it's the event that she gets to hang out with other parents for, and it is a really, really fun event. And is that Newton North is a community for all. We are a community for our students, certainly, for our staff, and for our caregivers and families. And so for some of you families, this may be your first time coming into this building. For some of you, this is like you can't even count the number of times you've been in this building. How many of you are a returning Newton North parent here? Raise your hand. And so these are the people to really ask questions to over the next few days. Thank you. And for some of you, you may have gone to Newton North. Your parents may have gone to Newton High School. We have 12,000 active alumni who are still engaged with the ongoings of Newton North to understand what's going on in their high school. That's the kind of community that we have, the kind of energy we have. We have some of you kids here who were born and were just born to be a Tiger. You knew you wanted to be a Newton North Tiger. And for some of you, you may be just trying to question whether you should be coming to this school or not, because maybe you're moving from a different town or different state or different country. And you're trying to decide whether Newton North's the right place for you. And what I will say is that one of the special points of this school is, though we are big, is that we are a really strong community, and we are here to support you over your 4 years and beyond. The other special thing about Newton North is that we prepare you well. We prepare you to be independent. We prepare you to be a young adult, hence the example I gave to my daughter as we start to, as teenagers make decisions about growing up. We are here as partners with parents to support your child as they grow up. And what we are excited about is that when we hear back from our alumni, most of whom who go to college, but many who go to into the military, others who go into work through our career and tech and education program. But when we ask our students who will go to college, do they feel prepared? They are emphatic yes. They feel like they are prepared academically, and they are also prepared socially. How to work with different people. That's the benefit of going to a large public high school, is how do you work with people who may have different experiences from you, who may learn differently from you, who may have different backgrounds from you. And what we also find is our students are prepared to go to college. What we have learned every year we asked our graduating class, did you get into one of your top 3 colleges? And about 4 years ago, we were hovering around 78% of students who said that they got into one of their top 3 colleges. We love this question because it's for the student who's applying to the most competitive colleges, and it's for the student who's applying to small public colleges, and for students who are applying to colleges internationally, and for students who are applying to community colleges. And so a couple of years ago, it was around 78%. Last year, our graduating class, 84% of them said they got into one of their top 3 colleges. And so that is a statistic that we are proud of. And yes, we're proud of the number of students who get into the most competitive colleges, but we are also proud of where students, that they're gonna go where they wanna go. And that's what we're really proud about, and that's what makes Newton North really, really special. And another thing that we're really proud about is the amount of choice that our students have. And that's one of the ways in which they grow up to be independent, is that choice is a huge part of Newton North. We have a ton of electives. There are no schools that you can find that have the number of robust electives that we have, from auto tech to carpentry to photography to ceramics, to robotics, to engineering. I can go on and on and on. We're really excited that we are naming a new course. You're the first ones to hear this publicly, that we are starting to offer a health assisting program with the hope that we're going to build a career technical education program for students who are aspiring to work in the health fields, whether you want to be a paramedic, a doctor, a nurse. And so we're really excited about that. And the other place is clubs, activities, and extracurriculars. Is that we have about 500 students who participate in athletics. We have as many students who participate in theater as we do in athletics. It is very common for you to be an athlete and for you to be in another aspect of our school, whether it is theater. Our Lagerbots, which is one of my favorite programs, which is our robotics team, is robust. You can see them practicing at 8 o'clock at night here. The energy in this building is electric, and the research shows is that a student who is more involved in their school does well academically. And so we want students to choose an extracurricular activity. We want them involved in their school. It makes them healthy, and it also makes them, it helps them to do well academically as well. Because there's so much choice, we do want to sometimes have conversations with students about too many decisions or too many things that they're doing, and that certainly is possible here, and we're here to help you with that. And that's what really the rest of the night is for, as well as on February 13th. So I hope you get to see how wonderful the school is. I hope you get to love it as much as I love it. This is a really special place with really caring adults who are here for kids. We are a student-centered school, and we believe that our diversity is our strength. And as we continue to grow as a school, that is certainly clear that we continue to get stronger as a school. And so with that, I will pass it to your house dean. You are all in Barry House. Your house dean, Mr. Capodilupo.
Thank you, Henry. Amy, could you go to the next slide? Oh, thank you. Hi, my name is Nick Capodilupo. I'm currently the dean of the class of 2025, and one of the things that I'm going to be doing is helping with transition. So today, earlier, a few hours ago, me and Principal Turner were working with one of my students on graduation requirements and supporting them, and then a couple hours later, I'm talking to the class of 2029. So that's exciting. It's great to see so many families here. It's especially great to see so many students here. This is a ton of energy in this room, as Principal Turner started with, and so I'm here to just tell you a little bit about the dean role. For those of you who are not familiar with the way our house system works, is, as Principal Turner said, we're divided into 4 houses. You'll be members of the house, Barry House. And can you go to the next slide? I got it. All right, so the way that our house system works is each grade has their own office they report to. Think of it as the main office for your individual grade, okay? And think of me as the principal for the individual grade. I work alongside Miss Eileen Peruzzi, our amazing admin assistant. If you haven't met her yet, you will very soon. I call her the MVP of the Barry House because she's probably one of the favorite people for kids to come and check in with and talk to. And she's the person that you're going to connect with over any attendance concerns. If you just need somewhere to check in, if you have a question, you come see there. So if you ever walk by the Barry House, there's always kids in there. We're always communicating. And the way that we kind of see our role, it's to support kids academically, in terms of emotionally, and anywhere else in between, right? And so I see my role as to support kids and support the staff that support kids as well as their families. So anything that comes up that you may not sure what you need, but you need to bounce it off someone, you can come to the Barry House, right? I'm also there to kind of outline expectations for kids and then help them follow them. So when you come into the high school, some things are gonna feel similar and a lot of them are gonna feel really different. So we will encourage you to get involved, ask questions, and come to us if anything at all needs clarification. We work with you, we work with your families, and the goal is that you have an amazing experience. As Principal Turner said, we want kids to get involved early in whatever it is that is interest of you, right? So tonight, make sure you're paying attention to some of the things that are offered at our awesome school. You'll get to hear from a lot of different folks with a lot of different opportunities for you to get involved, and we can't wait to see you later in the spring for our Step Up Day, and then again in the fall. All right, thank you so much. Up next, we have Miss Amy Winston, our Vice Principal.
Thank you. I got it. See if I can. Hi, everybody. Welcome, as I said earlier, to those of you that were here earlier. I'm Amy Winston. I'm the vice principal here at North. I'm also the person that has already sent you quite a few emails. Pre-COVID, the students used to say I was the email lady. That was my job. Thankfully, I do a lot of other things other than send email, but it will be one of the ways that you get to know me. A major part of my responsibilities here are communication with our students and families. Dr. Turner and I like to say that he is like the CEO of this large, complicated place, and I'm the COO. So I'm responsible for a lot of the operations here, and that includes scheduling and registration. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the high school schedule and talk a little bit about registration. So we're doing these 8th grade nights a little earlier this year. So our course catalog, Opportunities, the new one, hasn't been posted yet, but you can access the current school year's opportunities on the website, and 99% of the information will be exactly the same. We have some updates, some additional classes, like Dr. Turner said, but the large majority of the information that is there is relevant to you. I encourage students and families to spend some time over the next couple months taking a look at that catalog, particularly the introduction section. So early in the catalog, there are 2 pieces of information that really relate to what we believe around what an education at Newton North is about and how we support our students. Newton North has a commitment to opportunity, access, and excellence for all students. And a core value at North is that all students are appropriately challenged and supported, both in terms of the work in individual classes and more broadly across a student's schedule. And so as you think this spring about what courses your student is registering for next year, you will hear references to these 2 concepts throughout the registration process. And later tonight, as you hear from some of our educational leaders in different departments, they're going to talk more in depth about what that looks like around challenge and support in our 9th grade classes. So, like I said, I really encourage students and families to read that introductory section of the catalog. I feel like sometimes people just skip over it to get to those courses because those are really exciting. But there's a lot of important information right up front in the catalog about how course registration works and what we believe around courses here at North. So our schedule at the high school is fairly different than the middle school schedules. For starters, we're on a Monday through Friday, which I think is better than a 6-day cycle, personally. But I never could quite follow that middle school 6-day cycle when my daughter was there. We have 7 blocks, A through G, And each quarter, your student will be enrolled in a maximum of 7 classes. We have full year courses, semester courses, and quarter courses. And students in grade 9 must take a minimum of 6 classes each quarter. Students in grade 9 with 6 classes in a particular quarter would then have directed studies in their 7th block. So you might have 7 classes in a quarter, you might have 6 classes and have directed studies. This is what our schedule looks like. I'm going to talk a little bit about different parts of it. But we do have those 7 blocks, A through G. They each meet 3 times a week. They meet for 65 minutes earlier in the week, and then they each meet for 75 minutes later in the week twice. We have WIN blocks, and we have Tiger. So we have a lot of different pieces for you to learn about as we work on putting your schedules together. So I have a typical grade 9 student's schedule. Obviously that looks different than this, but you get the basic idea, which is that for the full year, our grade 9 students have English, math, introductory physics, world history, a world language. They'll have 2 quarters of PE, a foundations and core PE course, and a sexuality and health class. And they'll have some electives and some directed studies. We also have students who have academic support. You can see that they then still have electives and PE and can have world language in their schedule. Or we have students who have semester electives. Some of our electives are by the semester, some are full year, some are by the quarter. But there's lots of different ways that all of these different courses can fit together. On the Newton North website, you're going to find a page that's dedicated just to you and the class of 2029. And so throughout the spring, I send information to you through Parent Square. It will also get posted on the website. So we do have students and families here tonight in the audience or at home whose 8th graders are in private school. If you're in private school, you don't get my fun emails, but you will be able to access all of the information through the class of 2029 website page on the website. And we try to keep that updated as information goes out to all of you. So I went through kind of quickly what our schedule looks like and what all these different courses are that you're going to be taking. So how are you going to decide what courses you're taking next year? How are you going to register for them? So here is our timeline for this spring for our current 8th graders. Your classroom teachers in our 8th grades in our Newton middle schools are going to start talking to you about course registration before February vacation, which means very soon. Teachers have to enter their course recommendations into Aspen by March 4th. And then on March 4th, Aspen opens to students to start to make their selections around their elective choices. Students are actually the ones that log into Aspen and make their elective choices. This is part of our transition to high school. It won't be the parents that are logging in and entering the courses. It'll be the students. And so students, you'll access Aspen using your same Google login that you use for all the other systems in Newton. And you have about a week to enter your elective selections into Aspen. And then we have about a month where counselors can go through and review student selections to make sure that you have everything that you need before we finalize our courses for staffing the building for the fall. So that's course registration in a nutshell, running from February 10th to April 7th. So I'm going to ask that you get this date in your head, which is April 7th. It's the last day to make changes. Every summer, I'm one of the folks who's here in the summer because I'm 12-month, and I get emails from folks, oh, I changed my mind. I don't really want to take this elective. I'd rather take that elective. Unfortunately, we have to hold everyone that the courses that you request by April 7th are final. We make decisions about every course in this building, how many sections we offer, and how many art teachers we need, how many music teachers we need. All of those pieces are based on the course requests that are made by our students. And so we really think it's really important that everyone is conscious of that as they're making course selection in the spring. So they're making thoughtful choices around their electives so that we can build the master schedule to get you into as many of your electives as possible. If you are not currently in the 8th grade in an NPS middle school, you will have to register online through the Newton Public Schools website. There's a registration page there. And then in the late spring, after your online registration is complete, you'll be contacted by the Newton North Counseling Office to schedule a registration appointment. You make your course selections in those registration appointments with a Newton North school counselor. The sooner that you go online and register online and submit all of the necessary paperwork, then the earlier kind of in the stream of appointments you will be to have a spring registration appointment to make those course selections. And as Dr. Turner said, second part of 8th grade night is Thursday, February 13th. It is absolutely one of my favorite nights of the year. It is in person from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., students and families. It includes our electives open house, and we also have student panels where you can hear from our students about their experience at Newton North. So we strongly encourage you to be here for those events. And I'm going to hand it over to Beth Swederskas, our counseling department head.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My goodness. All right. So, I know a big question on all of your minds is, what is the transition to this big, scary high school all about? Just take a deep breath. It'll all be fine. I promise. And I could sum it up in 4 words. Balance. You can hear a lot about that. Connections, independence, and support. Okay? So, as our 9th graders, you're going to hear this a lot as you think about coming into 9th grade. They should be appropriately challenged, not overwhelmed, and not underwhelmed, because that also is not a great path to go down. Course choices should reflect who our students are, their talents, their challenges, their interests. And really, it's so vitally important to strike a healthy balance. Things can get stressful. And at the high school, things, can ramp up a bit. So we just want to make sure that the balance is there to really achieve the goals with the onset of coming into high school. In addition to all the classes, it's about also making time and taking responsibility for themselves, as well as activities and family time, and want to see the friends, and also having some downtime. So really taking that all into consideration is really important to do. Making connections. You've heard about this for a little bit, and you're going to hear about it more. And getting involved in clubs and activities and teams and things like that is fantastic to do. And you'll really meet people right away. We know that for some freshmen, it may take a little time. They want to feel a certain level of social comfort before maybe joining a new activity or trying a new team or having some kind of organizational system. From that perspective, it's okay. All right, so my advice is that for parents and guardians, and making soft suggestions and asking, inquiring, some questions, but don't push too hard. We just want to make sure there's no specific timetable and there's something at North for everyone. And if there's not, out of the 106, are we at 106 clubs right about now? You can start your own. So the sky is the limit when it comes to the really amazing things, and we have a ton of student affinity groups. We just want people to feel belonging and to have connection. And again, it doesn't have to be right away, but there's also an opportunity to, do some inquiry, dip a toe, and see how the rest of the year is going to progress. Independence. So, as parents and guardians, fostering independence is to know when to be there for your child, right? And also know when to take a step back a little bit. And that's a lovely dance that I think everybody is trying to navigate. And for our students, you may have this dilemma of wanting, to kind of have that independence, but still knowing that your parents and guardians are there when you need them. Young teens need to begin to manage their independence from a way of their own schedules and their own work and their responsibilities. And so it is, and it sounds like it's a lot to take on, but with this gentle push and maybe making suggestions, but things like a routine and what happens at night and figuring out when to do homework and when to get that extra help, it may not look the same of what a parent or guardian may figure out, but when that student gets to own what their systems are, it really can be something very, very fruitful as they move forward. And always have the opportunity to come back and reflect on saying, like, you know what, that doesn't really work. I'm thinking about trying something new. But there's not one right way to do everything, even if it's not the way we do it, and we got to figure out how to manage that for ourselves. And support. We want to make sure that our students have as much of a smooth and successful transition to Newton North. So I can speak from the counseling perspective that every student is going to be assigned a school counselor for all 4 years. And we feel that this continuity of care is vital to establish that meaningful relationship with our students and our counselors who get to know each other quite well. And we also, as by extension, we want to make sure that we are resources for our families. Who knows your children better than you do, right? No one. So we want to make sure, because there's going to be times when your child may find themselves in a situation that they can't totally figure out on their own, but it doesn't mean a parent or guardian has to pick up the phone or send that email right away. It's okay if they experience some discomfort, that's all right. But we're also here to help them and figure out and navigate and problem solve. These are skills that are going to be for their life so important for them to have. So, and we know that there's a lot of information that you get and all that. It is okay. There's no question not worth asking. And it's okay to also reach out and making sure, because that's what we want to make sure that this partnership starts off in really, really positively. So with that being said, I wish every single 8th grader the best as we finish up the rest of this year, because it's flying by like that. And I really look forward to welcoming in the class of 2029 in September and establishing a really fruitful and meaningful relationship with our families and our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
All right.
As our next set of panelists come and find their seats, I'll just say that I think really one thing to be reassured is that of the 4 people you just heard from, I'm still the newbie, and this is my 9th year. And so, as a leadership team, we've worked together for a long time, and really can answer a lot of your questions. So please feel free to do that. And I'll just say one other piece to this is the electives piece, which you'll get more information about on February 13th. Is sometimes we get questions about my student hasn't had experience with playing the tuba or cooking. Do they need expertise in order to take the course? And the answer is that because we are a large school, we have the staff to be able to support the student who's been playing the tuba for a long time and for the student who just wants to learn the tuba for the first time. And we have the staff for the student who has known for a long time they want to be a chef, and for the student who doesn't know the difference between a fork and a spoon. And so we will support them in every way to make sure that they find their passion. And so what I will also say is they shouldn't just choose the things that they think they need to take, or choose the courses that just because their friends are taking, or because they heard X teacher is an incredible teacher. We have a ton of incredible teachers, and the idea of high school is to find their passion. And this may be, for a lot of them, the last time in their educational career where they get to choose something that they don't know anything about. And so taking that course that you may have not thought of whether you're interested in, and you may find a new passion for yourself. And that just is a good reminder is that when you sign up for classes, you want to sign up for a lot of backup courses, because courses we do only have a certain number of enrollment, and it is random, and for our elective courses, so it's important to sign up for multiple courses so that you can make sure you get those electives. I would love to introduce you to a really talented group of educational leaders. These are the departments that your child has to take a course in. They are our math, English, science, social studies, and world language, and physical education, health, and wellness department chairs. And so I'll pass it to them for their presentation, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask your questions, and any of us will answer questions for you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Dilworth. I am the chair of the English department here. Welcome. Thanks, Henry. So we are here tonight to give you a little bit of an overview about our philosophy and our approach to teaching and learning here at Newton North. And we're also here to help you understand a little bit about the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade, coming from the middle schools to the high schools. So as you heard from Henry, there's a bunch of us here from some different departments. We are going to each take like a different section, and we've compiled a bunch of questions that we often get asked. So we have a little bit of a Q&A format, as well as to give you a little bit of an overview around our teaching and learning here at North. So now I'm going to pass the mic over to Kanchan. Oh, yeah, you got it. Sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kanchan Kant. My official role is Assistant Department Head of the Math Department. Our department head is currently on a medical leave for a little bit, so I'm filling in. And welcome. I'm very excited to see you all.
I lost track here. Hi, I'm Greg Drake. I'm the Department Head for History and Social Sciences.
Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Albert. I am the PE Health and Wellness Department Chair.
Hi, I'm Heather Hotchkiss. I'm the Department Head for Science, Technology, and Engineering.
My name is Chris Wood. I'm Department Head for World Language. And the first question we have tonight is for Heather Hotchkiss. Heather, what are our instructional practices and innovations at the high school?
Thanks, Chris. To answer this question, we are going to each provide an example from our own departments that highlights the kinds of instructional innovations we have been working on at Newton North. So you will be hearing from each of us before we move on to the next question. My science curricular example comes from all of the 9th grade physics classes. You might remember in your own physics class when it came time to practice problems, being assigned textbook problems indefinitely and indiscriminately. Everyone just had to get through it all. Our physics team has worked hard to ensure our problem sets are not like that. No matter which of the 9 intro physics teachers you are assigned, everyone has collaborated on a core set of practice for each unit of study that is structured the same way. We call these alpha, beta, gamma practice sets. As an aside, the naming convention becomes a useful memory device when we teach nuclear physics, because alpha radiation is the least dangerous outside the body, and alpha problem sets are the least dangerous problem sets. Mm-hmm. Yep. So we tell students that beta level problems are what to expect on an assessment. So everyone is required to do one of the beta problems sets. However, some students choose to start with alpha problems, which are designed to help students build foundational skills for the unit. Then they move to beta problems. Other students start with beta problems, find what is just right, that's just right the challenge for them, and they continue practicing beta problems for the next set to work forward towards full proficiency and independence. Finally, other students start with beta problems, then are ready to apply their understanding at a level beyond what is being assessed. This group would move to a gamma problem set for their final problem set. In the force unit, for example, this problem-solving structure has allowed us to provide support to students who are building their independence with solving for a missing variable in a force problem, at the same time as we provide stretch to students who are ready to solve multi-step force problems with added complexity of coefficients of friction and added depth of connecting to the past unit of motion. During practice days, students have tailored opportunities to focus on the skills of the unit in the level of depth and complexity that is appropriately rigorous for them. Students make decisions about what will best fit their needs, and the physics team supports students in self-reflection and goal-setting cycles to ensure that they are making choices that are getting them where they need to go. Across the intro physics team, practice is not about volume, rather it is about getting each student practice at the right depth and complexity to ensure each student will grow their skills.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the previous practice of knowledge accumulation and the shift to our current practice of knowledge application and context. So previously in our sexuality and health class that all ninth grade students participate in, it was really content focused. So we'd ask students to be able to list the 5 effective steps of an effective refusal, or how does nicotine affect the brain? And all of that knowledge is really, really important. And at the same time, we need to make sure that these students can take these skills into their everyday life and be able to put those things in practice. So now what we do, I'm going to give you an example from our lesson on effective communication. So this unit is focused on active listening skills, being able to figure out boundaries, what they're okay with and what they're not okay with, and how to communicate those boundaries. So the class that I was observing at the beginning, they were in their effective communication unit. It was towards the end of the unit. And I walked in, and the warm-up activity were students working in pairs, practicing validation skills. And so one student would listen to their peer. They would be able to practice those active listening skills, be able to retell the situation that their partner just shared with them. And then it was really cool to watch students feel, you could see their shoulders and feel like, oh, like this person gets me. They felt seen, heard, and understood. The next part of the lesson was when students, they sat down and brainstormed real life situations that they would see that might be difficult to navigate in real time. So think some students were talking about being asked on at a date that they didn't want to go on, or being offered a substance such as nicotine or alcohol, or being asked to skip class. Like, what would they do in those real challenging real life situations? And then the teacher previously had gone over the 5 effective steps to a refusal, and they took time on their own to come up with a script. And some students used a comic strip with drawings to show their learning of the 5 steps. Some students used a worksheet that the teacher had given as a template, and they just brainstormed on their own, like what they think they would do. And then after that, then they got into practice, the groups of 3, and they had to, first they could use the script, right? So they had prepared it, they'd put it together, they could read off of it. And then as the lesson progressed, those supports sort of lessened when students were ready to think on their feet, to think of the actual real life situation and how could they respond to it. So again, as someone watching this, it was really awesome to see the kids feel prepared and confident and ready to navigate those challenging situations when people are asking them to push past their boundaries.
Hi. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways that we are revising some of our previous curricular, instructional, and assessment practices that often ended up sorting students in buckets and separated students from one another rather than putting them together to really learn from one another. And so we're trying to think about ways to make more inclusive, flexible, and sort of like nuanced practices to involve more students in our classes. So I want to talk a little bit about English and what this may look like in an English class, particularly in a 9th grade English class. So our previous metric, that was sort of like a standard metric for rigor and complexity, was a lexile level, which simply means like how complicated the language was. So, you may think about, something like Charles Dickens or something like that. And we still do read some classics, don't get me wrong. You may, in 9th grade, read something like Lord of the Flies or Romeo and Juliet or The Odyssey. The language is complicated, it's challenging, and it's difficult to sometimes access, and it's hard to even get to the unpacking stage because you have trouble sort of understanding what the heck the author is trying to say. There is a benefit to this, of course. There's problem solving and, how do we develop our reading strategy skills. So there is a benefit to that. But if that's the whole way that we are looking at rigor, then that's limiting. What about our students with language disabilities? What about students who are, not comfortable and haven't developed all of their abilities to like problem solve and get frustrated and feel like unequipped to enter into a text? So we've expanded the way that we look at rigor and complexity and also think about the way that content can be important. So for example, we may also have some texts that have easier language to access. So they're lower on a lexile level in terms of the complexity, but the content is actually quite challenging. Very hard to unpack, super complex, super nuanced. So the strategy there isn't about like accessing it and unpacking the language. The strategy and the hope is to really wrestle with the ideas and think about, that the not easy answers that often come in these texts, and of course we encounter those not easy answers in life. So one thing that may look like in ninth grade, we may be reading Elizabeth Acevedo's Poet X. And while we are looking at how to unpack a poem and the language itself is very poetic, which may be hard for some students, it's also written with like vocabulary that you can understand. And we spend time sort of unpacking, what is this person, our main character, what is her journey? What is she dealing with? What are the layers to her identity that sort of inform the way that she goes through and experiences the world? And then we can ask really like hard, nuanced questions. I went into a class and they were reading a couple of the students' entries into their sort of diary, and one that they sort of shared with their teacher and one that they wrote for themselves. And so we talked about what did we learn from this juxtaposition between sort of her public and private self. And that led to really interesting conversations about the ways that we do that when we enter and walk into different environments. Another way, so beyond just looking at the text complexity, we also look at our instruction. And while we do believe in the benefit of some whole class instruction where we all are looking at a book together and we all unpack it and get that rich experience together and use that to sort of measure skills together as a group, it also can like perhaps leave some students out. If they don't like the book, let's face it, they're not going to read the book. Or they may read other things, or just choose not to engage. And so while it has some benefits, that can't be, again, the only measure of rigor or complexity. So what we also do is some lit circles, which many students experience in middle school, where they work with more sort of diverse classes. And I went into a class the other day where they were reading a series of different graphic novels. And there were about like 6 different choices, and they were all in different reading groups. The skills were the same, right? Looking at analysis, looking at characterization, looking at theme, and then also looking at the tools that an author uses to create their story through composition, through color, through language. And so the students were in their book-alike groups talking with one another, and then they went to more heterogeneous groups and talked with people who were reading something else. And they had to have like a dialogue that pushed their thinking in ways that they wouldn't do just if they were only talking about the text themselves. And in the end, this sort of prepared them to deepen their analysis, but also apply that analysis to their own writing of a graphic memoir where they had to explore a significant moment in their life using the very tools that they had been analyzing. So that's sort of a couple examples of what this may look like in an English classroom. And now I think I have Chris. Take it away.
Hi. Well, we understand that our students are individuals and that heterogeneity is the rule in our classes, not the exception. And knowing this, we know that a more traditional one-size-fits-all approach to world language can be quite harmful and not equitable. Such an approach in world language would probably look a lot like what I had when I was in high school in world language. Lots of memorization, memorizing standardized vocabulary lists, memorizing standardized conjugations, and all students need to do exactly the same kind of memorization. And then to assess that, we give everyone the same exact quiz or exam. We give it 100 points, and we can quite easily generate A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. Very reliable way to sort of one size fits all sort students into those categories. But this isn't the way languages work, right? We use a concept called proficiency to measure what students can do with a language rather than what they can do with their brains in terms of memorizing things. So what a student can do, what a student can understand in reading and listening, what a student can communicate in writing and orally determines their proficiency level. This is a much more holistic way of looking at what students can do in world languages and how we can assess them. In addition to using a proficiency lens, we also recognize the importance of UDL, Universal Design for Learning. This means that our lessons and our assessments are designed to provide multiple starting points and on-ramps for our students. Students start at various proficiency levels, and we know that in order to effectively meet their learning needs, we need to meet them where they are and show them what they need to do in order to progress in proficiency in world language. And we want to provide a variety of ways for students to demonstrate their learning outcomes so that all students can show us what they can do and how they've progressed. A clear example of UDL and proficiency, what they look like in the language classroom. Some students in Spanish 3 might have a novice high to intermediate low proficiency level, and others might have an intermediate low to intermediate mid proficiency level. So this is a reality, and this is not by design, this is just always the case in a world language classroom. In order to stretch both groups, a unit on maps and getting around a city might have as a final project, for the first group, a presentation on a particular point of interest to them. They can present to the class where they might find the important landmarks and how to get there, and why they're important. The second group might be asked to participate in a conversation in which one student is a travel agent and the other a tourist as they investigate and negotiate an itinerary. So you can see that these are different tasks. They're using the same kinds of basic skills, but one is asking students to stretch a little bit farther along the proficiency scale. To ask the other group to do this would not be that helpful to them because they don't have those skills yet, but we are always stretching them and moving them on to the next level. Proficiency and UDL are North Stars, gold standards for instruction and assessment in world language. But this doesn't mean there's no place for verb conjugations or vocabulary quizzes. Sorry guys, you're going to see that for sure in the world language classroom. These are still valid and important ways for students to build their toolboxes. Knowing how to safely use a power tool like a saw doesn't mean I know how to build a house, right? But if I want to build a house, I probably need to know how to use a power saw. So the micro skills of conjugation, of vocabulary, are important in the development of the macro skills of proficiency. At the same time, UDL is very demanding of our teachers. It requires great creativity and a tremendous amount of work. The teachers in world language are just this. They're creative, they're hardworking, they believe in excellence, they are warm demanders, and they're always learning. And they can't wait to see this year's 8th graders here on the second floor of Newton North High School next fall. So next we have Greg.
All right, so I've been asked to talk about our instructional shift from teacher-centered instruction to student-centered instruction, and I hope it's a coincidence that they asked a history teacher to do this. I will say before I start that none of these things are all or nothing, right? When we talk about shifting our instructional practices, we're talking about shifting away from something that was sort of all we did or most of what we did and really building a more diverse toolbox for our teachers. So in history, that might look like less lecture, more student-centered work. And we know from research that students actually learn best when they're active participants in the learning process. If you ask them how they learn best, sometimes they say, oh, I like to listen and get a lecture, but actual research says that those students who think they're learning more are actually learning less when they're not actively engaged. So when you walk into a 9th grade world history classroom, which is what all of you 8th graders will be doing next year, You're just as likely to see students clustered in small groups working on something as you are to see the teacher at the front of the class. And what that student-centered group work allows for is it allows students to lean into their strengths, which is particularly important in a heterogeneous classroom, as most of our 9th grade classrooms are quite heterogeneous. For an example, you may have a student who has really strong verbal skills, paired with someone who has really strong writing skills, paired with someone who has really strong artistic skills, right? And they each can lean in on a project to the skills that they bring to the table and create something together. Another piece of that, which is really important in a history classroom, which we think of as really, right, a chance for students to learn about democracy and to learn about communication and to learn about working together, is that in those small groups you also have students that have different backgrounds and they bring different perspectives to the conversation, which helps all of them to build collaboration, leadership, and communication skills. So in a classroom setting, this might look like students gathered around a set of documents, maybe a piece of artwork, a map, and they're using their collective strengths to persevere through a difficult task, which we know perseverance is a skill that in many cases needs to be rebuilt in our post-COVID world. I was actually just observing a 9th grade world history class this week and I saw this in action. One of our major units in 9th grade is centered around world religions, and we have a monotheism unit where students are learning about the main ideas and the impacts of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I went in and students were confronted with this document packet that had all of these documents from all 3 of these monotheistic religions. And what was really interesting is because you had students in those groups with different backgrounds, they had different levels of exposure to the different documents, right? You had Christian students who said, oh, I know what this is. You had Jewish students who said, oh, I remember this story, right? And you had Muslim students who said the same thing about their documents. And so not only were they working together, but they each had prior knowledge that they were bringing to the table that made the whole group work more efficiently and get sort of a deeper understanding of the documents, right? And that's what you'll see, I think, in a lot of our history classes, because we really are talking about in history is not memorizing facts, but you do need to have some facts memorized. But what we're really talking about is historical thinking skills and how do you wrestle with big ideas. And the only way you really wrestle with big ideas, you can't do that silently while the teacher's talking, you do that with your peers, right? And that's a skill that we start at the beginning of the year when we might be debating Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts, and then those debate skills get transferred into talking about, the longer term causes of the fall of the Roman Empire. So I think you'll see that these are the type of skills that are going to be reflected throughout 9th grade classrooms, where we really believe that what used to be called the soft skills, as we look forward into the future, those are actually the most important skills that our kids are going to learn in their 4 years here at Newton North.
So I'm supposed to talk about how our status quo has changed from when students had to understand what was taking place during a class period. If they didn't, they were required to make some extra time. They were supposed to come to wind blocks, tiger blocks, and extra time outside of classroom to get some help. And in fact, that was the expectation. And if they did not do that, the alternative was to fall behind. From that, we are moving to engaging students with material in different ways so that they can seek support as part of the lesson with the teacher and with one another. When we talk about multi-tiered system of support for students, what we are talking about here is ensuring high-quality Tier 1 instruction, ensuring that all students in the classroom receive instruction that supports them in achieving the standards for learning and doing that at high levels. I'm going to share an example from a Math 1 Honors Accelerated class, which highlights the ways in which instruction can be designed to provide support in the classroom and also allow students who are working at high levels to be stretched and challenged. This is a class that I observed very recently, and this is a model that I would say that I've seen at this point in a lot of our math classes. Students completed a warm-up that had problems of different complexity and challenges, and some students completed one problem in the time given to them, and some completed all 3 that were in front of them. And once they were done with that, teacher asked the students to do some self-reflection. What how did that go? What do you need next? What kind of instruction? What kind of practice? And once the students were done with their self-reflection, they were given choices. They were asked to make choices based on what they thought they needed. I need more instruction or modeling. I am ready to try this on my own today. I am ready for a stretch and I can challenge myself. I was not present in the last class and I need to make up work or I need extra instruction. Students made choices based on where they were, with teachers' guidance, but yes, they were self-assessing and making those choices. And once done, they dispersed to the whiteboards which were present all around the classroom, and they were working on problems of different levels of difficulty. And teachers could see what they were doing because they were all around the classrooms. Other students can see what they were doing, and the students could walk around and they could change their groups based on what they think would challenge them the most. Teacher could walk around and focus on students that needed extra practice. They could walk around and be like, oh, I see this person has done a really good job. Why don't I call the entire class together and talk about it? So that ways, not only were students were able to view one another's work, the classroom teacher was able to challenge groups who were looking to stretch. They could support and reteach when needed. Better yet, students see what others are doing and are able to help or join a group when they want a greater challenge. This promotes making mistakes and learning from them. This acknowledges the various strengths in the classroom. It allows students to develop communication skills to talk about their math learning. It allows students to be stretched, and it also allows students to receive support inside the classroom. They don't necessarily need to attend wind blocks or tiger blocks in order to learn what is happening in the classroom. We always welcome them, and we would love to see them, but they don't need to because they missed instruction.
Thank you all for that lengthy response to question 1. I promise the rest are not that long. Okay, Chris, I'll direct this next question to you. How does the grade 9 classroom experience help with the transition from middle school to high school?
Well, this is a great question because really the 9th grade year is really all about transitions. Some of the transitions are very obvious, right? It's a much bigger building than we're all used to and many more students. So students need to learn how to navigate geographically and socially. And we give them lots of support to help them to do that. And a lot of that happens in the classroom where we try to build community. You'll see that during the first couple of weeks of school, there will be many teachers stationed outside of their classroom having one-on-one get-to-know-you meetings with students. There'll be lots of team building kind of activities going on inside the classroom. And of course, there are other spaces where students develop community in advisory, affinity groups, clubs. They also work with their counselors and their deans. So really those first several weeks are all about building community and making sure students really feel like they're part of many intersecting communities. But high school also offers increased curricular and extracurricular opportunities, which is very exciting, but also requires students to make choices and to develop time management skills. Students also experience an appropriate increase in academic demands, both in terms of the sophistication and depth of the content specific to a class, as well as the skills they acquire. Students will continue to build skills and strategies related to the learning processes, collaboration, problem solving, resilience, growth mindset, communication. We want students to feel confident asking questions and asking for help. And students will begin to make connections between these processes, these skills, and the successful building of competencies in the subject areas. Students will continue to develop strong executive functioning skills, organization, keeping track of materials, time management, etc. So all of these are really about increasing independence. We want and we will guide students to invest in their own learning, be active participants in their learning, make choices, discover their passions. The expectations is that they have increasing responsibility for their own success. In high school, students are given much more freedom, and with that freedom comes the ability to make good choices that enable them to thrive, or bad choices that can cause some real academic struggle. The transition to the high school classroom can be more difficult for some students than others. Students are not suddenly more mature just because the calendar says they're in 9th grade. And adjusting to a high school style of teaching and high school expectations can be stressful. Our policy and culture do not allow students to drop courses or to request different teachers in the courses that they're taking. Instead, we focus on establishing relationships and building the skills necessary to manage difficult situations. We encourage students to be self-advocates as a first step. They should initiate conversations with their teachers first, and school counselors, and then with deans if necessary. As a parent or guardian, please let the student practice self-advocacy before intervening. We're all committed to supporting students in this transition. They will struggle at times, some more than others, but they won't be alone.
Greg, next question is for you. What is our philosophy around placement at Newton North, and what does it mean to take a course at the CP, ACP, and honors level?
Great question, thank you. So our philosophy at Newton North is that we want all students to be appropriately challenged and to have enough support to be successful. And when we talk about levels and we talk about leveling, we're not talking about tracking, we're talking about a really fluid system where there are times for students to be able to check in, reflect on their own strengths, and reflect on areas to grow. We also want to make sure that students balance the overall schedule and workload based on their strengths and interests. So as rising 9th graders, sometimes a student may choose 1 or 2 classes where they really want to stretch themselves and 1 or 2 classes where they might need more support. Another part of our placement philosophy at the high school is that students are very much a part of the placement process and a part of the registration process that leads to decisions about courses being taken at a particular level. There are conversations between students and teachers so that students can share their goals and teachers can share their observations and evidence of learning. And there's an opportunity for the students to identify their own strengths as well. As 8th graders and 8th grade parents, please know that whatever your student is going to be recommended for going into 9th grade is a snapshot, it's a moment in time. And we also know that students grow a lot over that summer between 8th and 9th grade. So we have a lot of situations where we may find that a student is placed in a level coming from middle school and the teacher realizes really quickly that's not the appropriate level. We gather some evidence, we have some conversations, and we can make changes like that in 9th grade. So that is the philosophy. What are the levels? And Heather's going to talk more about how the levels are sometimes mixed. But we have college prep, advanced college prep, and honors, depending on the subject and depending on the year. We view college prep as our foundational course where students have access to all of the state standards. An ACP course is a course where students are going to be held accountable for increased depth and complexity. And then an honors course is where students are held accountable for even further depth and complexity. Heather, I have a question for you.
Bring it on.
What are multi-level classes?
That's a great question, Greg. Quite literally, multi-level means 2 or more curriculum levels are running concurrently in the same space with the same teacher. Historically, we've had many multi-level configurations across the school in order to support additional course offerings that we would not have been able to provide as standalone courses due to not being able to run classes under about 10 students. The success of this structure led to a more recent expansion of the multi-level class structure across many departments to attack a variety of systematic challenges in our school. So specifically, segregated populations of students in CP courses and inequitable access to upper-level courses, low and discrepant perception of connectedness to our school by population, and extreme levels of stress and mental health concerns for students. The multi-level structure, among a lot of other things you've heard about, have contributed to progress in all of these areas. Now, if you're imagining a classroom of 25 students in rows facing the board with a teacher providing a lecture all block on a given topic, it would be very difficult to imagine how students enrolled in a course at different curriculum levels could all be served in a single classroom at the same time.
This square peg, round hole problem can be solved by changing your mental image of what a 21st century classroom looks like. You need to be picturing things like you heard described earlier by all of us, situations where we're working to tailor to meet the needs of various students at the same time. These spaces can allow students to have access to support and opportunity for challenge in the same learning community. These spaces allow students to preview a challenge or support without changing a level, and this structure allows for seamlessly changing between levels within that classroom. As an added benefit to what I just described, students in multi-level classes are accessing curriculum in more heterogeneous groupings. This allows for a diversity of thought and perspectives. As a community, Newton has worked hard to converge upon 5 portrait of a learner traits that we want for all of our learners: adaptability, empathy, learner's mindset, critical thinking, and communication. This is exactly the skill set that is demanded of graduates as they leave us, and multi-level classes are one important strategy in our toolbox towards achieving that goal for all students.
Melissa, English Language Arts. I'm a parent. I have a 9th grader at Newton North High School, and he comes home, or she comes home and says, I have a problem in one of my classes. What do you do?
Well, Chris, I don't know if this is a rhetorical question or if you're setting me up to give the fastest response of the evening. But everybody, Chris Wood's initial response answered this question already, in that we are talking about self-advocacy, we are talking about problem solving, we are talking about approaching the teacher. So it was all covered with the first response that Chris gave. So we can now move on with the next question and on with the evening. Courtney, Kanchan, what do I do if my student needs more support?
All right. So we are a school that focuses on the whole student, which is really reflected when we talk about supports. So if you're unsure, earlier this evening you heard from our counseling department chair, Beth Swederskas, and she was sharing some of the supports that we have there. And so if you're ever unsure of how to advocate for your student, starting with their school counselor is a great place there to reach out to if you have questions there. Another question you can ask your student next year when they're here at Newton North, if they're struggling in a classroom setting, you can ask them how they're using their win blocks, how they're using their tiger blocks. So those win blocks are 3 times a week, and they get tiger block on Tuesdays. So you can ask them if they're struggling in a specific class, are they going to those blocks? And it's a time for them to connect with their teachers and get their questions answered, get clarification. So those are helpful questions to have. And again, just to echo what everybody else has said, really encouraging your student to advocate for themselves is a really important life skill to have. So if they are struggling, going and speaking to their teacher themselves is awesome as well.
We have, it's called the Student Intervention Team. It's led by deans and counselors and our school interventionist with input from teachers and other educators working with the student. They consider student situations and challenges and help them to access the most supportive level of intervention that the school offers, whether it is help needed with academics, social emotional well-being, or behavior management. There are lots of resources, and this team helps the students access those resources when they need it the most.
Thank you to our department chairs. So as we transition to this last part, which will be answering your questions, I think an important message that you heard from all of them is that maybe for a lot of us when we were in high school, we had teachers who taught us what they loved, the curriculum that they loved. And what you hear now is that our students are learning the curriculum that we love, right? There's an important shift there. And so a lot of questions probably were answered, but we are more than happy to answer your questions. This is the last and an important part of tonight. So I'll walk around if you raise your hand, and they have the microphone. Amy and I are here to answer questions as well. And Beth. And Nick.
I actually have one online, so I'm going to answer that one while you walk around for hands up. I'm going to give Dr. Turner time to get to you. Someone asked online about the timing for registration for our non-NPS 8th graders. Again, the earlier in the spring that your family can go online and register on the registration page of the Newton Public Schools, that information then comes through to us so that we can schedule a registration appointment for the student and family later in the spring, usually in like April-ish, we start those. So the sooner you get your registration materials in, the sooner we can start those meetings.
Amy, question for you, please. You mentioned on your timeline.
I'm going to ask you to use the mic just because.
Are you sure?
No, the microphones are going straight to the live stream, so we need everybody to know what question I'm answering.
Okay, Amy, so you mentioned, and thank you so much for your presentation. You walked through the scheduling and the timeline. You mentioned February 10th to March 4th, that teachers were putting recommendations into Aspen. Is that the primary mechanism by which they indicate what level the student should be?
Good question. So the teachers are having conversations with students between February 10th and March 4th. Each middle school has a different process. Your 8th grade teachers and counselors will tell you more about what their process is in terms of communicating with you. Our expectation is that the high school is around that conversation piece with students. It looks a little different in the middle schools, but there is communication to your student and you around what course they're recommending. They put it into Aspen by March 4th, but then again, we have that March 4th to April 7th time period where we do make some shifts as students and families kind of start to look at everything that's been recommended by the teachers. And parents will be able to see everything in Aspen, but students can do entries into Aspen.
All right, hi. I apologize if I missed this, but I'm still confused about what a tiger block is.
So I sat down and looked at Henry and said, I missed the fun stuff. I don't know this, but P.S., this is our first time back in person with this night since pre-COVID. I will say, I looked at Henry, I will say he was right, I was wrong. I was like, no, we're not going to
document that, please.
The auditorium. So everything's a little out of whack. So wind block and tiger block. So wind block is required time that our students are all required to be somewhere, but it stands for what I need. Students make selections every week for how they're going to use their wind blocks. That is everything from meeting with their teacher to playing sports, to going swimming in the pool, to going to do art, to going to hear a guest speaker. Or if a student is struggling, a teacher might require a student to meet with them. It's kind of guided what I need, what you need. And Tiger Block is once a week that is really completely open and flexible for all students and staff. It is when the large majority of our clubs meet, but it is also a time where students could meet with a teacher, do a quick check-in, if the teacher is available to meet with them at that time.
Is there a limit to how many electives you can put in Aspen that you want to be in? In the end, you'll only end up being in 7, but is there a limit to how many you can put in Aspen?
That's a great question. There's a lot of slots, like lots and lots of slots for alternates. But it's going to be important that you put no more than what actually fits for your primary electives. Sometimes we have students put like 20 bajillion, I like to make up numbers, for their primary. But your total number of credits on your schedule can be no more than 84. And so when we head into course registration, you'll get new, more fun videos like the one I sent last week with information that'll show you kind of how to set everything up in Aspen.
Is there any advice you can give us on transitioning to such a massive school?
Great question.
Where did that question come from? What's your name? William, that's a great question. Start small. So when you come over here for a step-up day, you're going to meet your counselor. You're going to find like a couple places for you to remember, right? Like the main office, like your house office, and a couple other landmarks. And slowly you just learn things little by little. Don't try to learn everything at once. It's much too big a place to do all in one sitting. You're welcome.
So for the placements that you explained to us, is that for each subject here, or is it just for math, or just for English, or is it across the departments? Each one gets a placement?
So each course, your student will be recommended for a level within that course, and that can be different, right? So a student may be recommended for CP English, ACP History, ACP History, Honors Math. In the configuration of what levels are available is different in each discipline. Math is the only discipline that has an honors option at the 9th grade level. So it's there's a little bit more gradation in math, but in English, history, world language, and science, it's really just CP or ACP. And you're always unleveled, right? Excellent.
What do you mean by swimming during the tiger block?
The pool is available and open 2 days a week, and it's really fun going in there and seeing the students in the pool swimming and playing and having fun. It's awesome. She has like full 25 kids every single wind block.
Pool is absolutely one of our first to fill wins every single week. One of the most popular places to be during wind block. I've got a couple questions online that I want to get to, and just want to mention for folks at home, if we don't get to your questions, I'll be taking all the questions that come in and putting together an FAQ with our questions from tonight. So don't panic if we don't get to your question this evening. We have a question about homework. My student doesn't have much now. Will that change?
Students do get homework, and they also have wind blocks to schedule some of their time around homework. So we are very thoughtful. I think if you go back to what I was saying about volume versus depth and focus, I think across all of our classes, we're trying to be mindful when we give homework to have the homework be purposeful and targeted, not just quantity for the sake of quantity. But yes, across all levels and all courses, there is an expectation of some independent practice.
What we have found in our new schedule is that with the What I Need block is that we do want students to choose with some balance. And so if you chose swimming every single wind block, you would have a lot of homework to do, and you might not be getting help from your teacher, right? So you may, if you have a lot to do that afternoon, then wind block's a great time to get your homework done. What we have found is that students are bringing, from our old schedule, they were bringing less home. That doesn't mean that they have less homework than in our old schedule. Wind block has been a nice time for them to work with friends, to collaborate, to be more productive than they were in our old schedule. We have a question here.
Hi there. I'm just seeing what's your policy on use of technology, AI, you know, how that's used, is it allowed, et cetera?
Thank you. So that's a timely question with the AI. So we do have a district cell phone policy. We've been having cell phone pockets in every classroom for the last several years. Every year, we've gotten better and better. I'd say we are at our most consistent in terms of use. So the expectation is that students go into the classroom, they put their phone in the pocket. 9th graders will all get a laptop from the district. They get a Chromebook, and so that's their technology that they need. They don't need their phone for any other reason. And then cell phones are not allowed in academic hallways. So that would be our 2nd through 4th floors. And so the reason why they're not completely banned is that, as I shared with you, is that there are a lot of students who will be here well into the evening, and so certainly we want them to be able to contact you if they need picked up or anything like that, but they're not allowed in academic spaces. We have a question here. Oh, I'm sorry, AI. AI, is that a thing? And so we are seeing increases of plagiarism as a result of AI use. We are, I think, at the forefront of thinking through how to help our students understand what are the ways in which AI can be helpful for their learning, and that we also want them to learn how to write. And so AI is not helpful in terms of writing their papers for them. And so we are working on that. We have identified students who are plagiarizing, and at the same time, I think we're really finding the right message for students in terms of helping them to see why it's important for them to learn to write and what the structures we're doing to make sure that we get them to learn to write. And code, because a lot of students are using AI for coding as well.
Hi, could you give me an idea of your average class size? I know that it could vary between subjects, but I'm just curious what we'd be looking at in terms of like smallest class size and largest class size. And the second question I had is, aside from the win blocks that you have, are there other opportunities for students to meet with teachers if they need any extra help?
You want me to do class size? So we definitely try to protect our 9th grade classes as much as we can when we staff the building. You know, as I said earlier, that the reason that April 7th date is so important is because we use that information very carefully when we staff the building, and we do really think carefully about our 9th grade classes. The overall average class size in the building is approximately 21, but in those 9th grade classes, depending on the level, depending on if it's multi-level, depending on the subject, you probably see a range between 16 and 24. Be about the range in those courses, including sexuality and health, which we also try to cap, but like the freshman core PE might be bigger. And then the electives all depend really on the subject area. So for example, our career and technical education classes have OSHA guidelines for safety that they have to follow in many of their spaces, so that dictates things, whereas obviously we want our band and our chorus and those groups to be as large as possible. So we have larger class sizes in some of those places as well. Somebody else want to tackle the seeing a teacher for help?
Yeah, I can. While obviously the what I need blocks are the best places, and so we would encourage anybody who has a question to use that opportunity first, and like Dr. Turner was saying, like not go swimming during all the blocks and then try to meet with a teacher at a different time. However, this is when we were talking about that whole idea of self-advocacy, that if students talk to their teachers and say like I'm booked, you know, sometimes a student has been out sick and that they can't be in every place at once and need to meet with all of their teachers to get back on track. So we are all flexible. So if you reach out, you know, we can sometimes meet after school, before school, during a lunch. The goal is to make sure that that student gets the help that they need, and to make sure that they're making good choices during the times that we have during the day, so that, you know, obviously we wouldn't want a student to feel like they don't have a place to get help.
We also have peer tutoring offerings too that can happen, where an upperclassman can get paired with a 9th grader and support that work there too.
Just a bit of a clarification on the mixed level classes. So say for science, physics, or math, is every single class going to be mixed level? And if not, can we see that when we register for those classes?
They're not all mixed level. So for science, the predominant mix is CP and ACP, and then honors are standalone. But for senior physics, honors and ACP are mixed, and we've had a lot of success with that. And in terms of each course, there are different configurations across the different departments for multi-level for different reasons, and also due to enrollment and registration and staffing. And so those are not things that are always predictable ahead of time. But we're very committed to ensuring that if a student is registered for a particular level, that no matter what the configuration of multi-level they're experiencing, that level is that level wherever it is offered.
I will just add one piece, because some of this is also some questions that are coming in online. I really encourage folks to read the course catalog, because there is a lot of descriptions about exactly what the configurations look like in each subject area and what our expectation is for what the courses are, how they'll be offered, and kind of where there's variance and where there's not. We do the best we can to predict, but it's a really important place to start is by reading those course descriptions. There's a lot of questions coming in from home with folks, is this offered to 9th graders? Is this offered to 9th graders? Is this offered to 9th graders? Guess where the answer is? They're all in the answers are really all in the course catalog. So you can really find those answers about what courses we offer, what topics we teach in 9th grade math, all of those pieces are in the course catalog.
For classes like chorus, band, and orchestra, would that be during Tiger Block?
Those are full classes here at North, very different than the middle school model. So those are one of your classes to take a music class, whether it be chorus or jazz workshop, any of those things. And one of the things that's really fabulous about WinBlock is that you might not have a music class in your schedule this quarter, but you can still do music during WinBlock, and the same with art. So there are opportunities to have those things in your life, even if they aren't in your schedule at a particular time in the year.
Thanks for a great presentation. For a student, when they start in a given subject at a certain level, do they stick to that same level throughout the years, or do they move up and down depending on various circumstances?
That is the benefit of multi-level, is that that students can move over the course of the year, particularly because it's in the same course. And so in our old schedule, students, we would have to blow up their schedule if they had to move to a different level. Now that they're in the same, often when they're in the same section, they can just move a level throughout the year. So that does happen. I don't know if anything to add there.
I heard that you can bring a computer from home and use that instead of the Chromebook. Is that true?
Our 9th and 10th graders are required to use NPS Chromebooks. And if a teacher asks you to take out your NPS Chromebook, you're expected to have it. And it is true that students sometimes bring other devices to school. But if a teacher asks you to bring out your NPS-issued Chromebook, which would have something like our lockdown browser, which is sometimes used for assessments, you would need to have your NPS Chromebook with you. For grades 11 and 12, we have a BYOD device. It's past my bedtime. Bring your own device to school, so our juniors and seniors can have an NPS Chromebook if they wish to have an NPS Chromebook. Many do, parents, just so you know, many families choose to use the NPS Chromebook. But if they would like to use their own device, they can return their NPS device.
How do lunches work? Does each grade get their own lunch? And if so, what do the other grades do while that grade is eating?
So incoming 9th graders take first lunch. Our sophomores probably take second lunch, and juniors and seniors take third lunch. That could change depending on certain individual classes or scenario, but that's generally what it is. That's right. He said everyone else is in class while you are at lunch.
Is the food good?
You kids are crushing it with your questions. It's very good. And students have a opportunity to eat at the Tiger's Loft, which is Newton North's restaurant, which is a fantastic option.
Well, Henry's walking across here. Some questions about the kind of that course recommendation process with your middle school teachers. It's really important that you understand that we don't know your children. The 8th grade teachers do know your children. So that conversation around course recommendation and what leveled courses students are going to take at the high school, those are conversations you have with the middle school staff. If you give us a call and start asking us questions, we're happy to answer questions about the courses, but we really can't decide what's best for your child because we don't know your students. And that's the same at the high school. We really rely on our high school classroom teachers. They know the individual students best. We don't.
Hi, I was wondering, how long have you guys been working on this transition that you walked us through, especially from volume focus, which was definitely my high school experience, to the more opportunity to go in greater depth and focus? And what kind of benefits have you seen? What kind of benefits do you see students appreciating in that?
Well, I can start as I pass the microphone, is that I would say that since this is my 9th year, and the school has been working on instructional shifts prior, but really more in depth over the last 7 to 8 years. And so that's why I would say that it's still an evolutionary process. We're still seeing areas where we are growing and improving those areas. in terms of instructional practice, but it's a passion for us as an instructional team. And I'd say the benefit that we are seeing from our graduates is preparation. And so it's preparation academically of what they're being challenged by in colleges and beyond, but also in terms of the discussions that they're having. And so I'd say just most recently, I got a lot of emails after the election from alumni parents who said that they were just so grateful that their kids were prepared to engage in really hard conversations around the election and post the election. And that they were surprised that their classmates were not prepared for that, in terms of how they reacted, in terms of how they were not willing to listen to each other. That is something their kid just would reach out to the parents and say, wow, I actually am surprised by how underprepared my friends are, and I feel prepared to have these kinds of conversations. So I think that was some of the most heartfelt responses that I got during that moment, during that time.
I guess one thing I would say specifically related to the volume pieces, I do think that it's something we've always thought about, and it came from, both a lot of self-reflection and sort of perception of how things are changing in the world. The self-reflection is we often would have students come back from very, very selective colleges and tell us that Harvard was easier than Newton North. And while we were somewhat proud of that, it also made us wonder kind of what we were doing that would give them that impression. And so really thinking about what is the purpose of giving work? Is it to say we give the work? I had a mentor who used to say, if you give too much homework, then the student will decide what of that homework they're gonna do. But if you give less homework, then you get to decide what they're gonna do. I mean, if they do it. But so yeah, the volume piece I think has been ongoing as well for a long time.
Hi. My question is about absences with teachers and what the children do when there's an absence in their classroom and how that's structured.
So that's a great question. We do not have substitutes for daily absences. And so the devices, the laptops, has actually been a huge help for us because of that. So this has been true of the high schools for well over 15 years, that there aren't daily substitutes. And we actually don't have the staffing. It would take a lot of staffing to cover the number of 300 teachers when they're daily absences. For long-term absences, so if someone is out for a long period of time, we are able to cover those classes. And our department chairs, it's one of their greatest challenges is to find a highly competent, highly knowledgeable educator to be able to cover their classes. So what do they do if a teacher is out for a day, they're sick? Then ninth graders do not have open campus. Ninth graders are required to go to the cafeteria. Assignments are given. They're expected to do work in the cafeteria to get work done in that class and also in their other classes.
And one more question, and then we can wrap up.
All right, you're really excited about your question, so I'm going to give the microphone to you.
So, for lunch, do you have to sit in the cafeteria?
Yes. All right.
We really hope that you will be back on the 13th. Henry and I will be wandering the halls that day. You can always stop us to ask any other questions, and feel free to send an email, and we'll happily get back to you.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you February 13th.